If you are a regular watcher of this YouTube channel, you will know that it has been some days since the semi-finals have finished. Since the final score was placed on the board, the whistle was blown, the teams eventually parted, and reflection, commentary, digression was offered about what happened on the fields of Stade de France in Saint-Denis, Paris, France. And it's Wednesday afternoon, New Zealand time, and I'm offering my first video reflection. That puts me at a sort of a distance where probably the minutiae of the contest isn't something that I'm going to engage in. And you've probably already moved on as well. Now, if you're watching this a large amount of time after the fact, then those type of details won't be so significant. So let me provide maybe some larger reflections about the two semi-finals and even the larger context that surrounded them for me. Whereas the quarterfinal was D-Day, was Judgment Day. I put a video out saying, what did the All Blacks need to do? Where do they need to finish for the decision by the NZRU to be viewed as a success? And I said, no matter where you landed, getting knocked out in the quarterfinals was not it. And they were able to overcome what a stirring performance. One of the best performances in recent memory. In fact, I'm just trying to think back to when there will have been a better performance. And maybe you have to go back to 2015. Because that was such a complete performance from the All Blacks. Such a disciplined performance from the All Blacks. They had clarity around what they were doing. They had execution and how they were applying their ideas, and the ability to stay within their formation, ability to stay within their game plan and hold out the Irish. The unlucky Irish, you got to say. Of course, we know the history, and that history will be playing on repeat for the next 4 years until another opportunity down under in Australia in 2027. So the All Blacks leading into this test match against Argentina, a nation we know very well. A nation that hadn't troubled us until very recently. And so that's like, well, they can get themselves up. They've got that Latin temperament. So if things fall their way, a card, especially if it's red, conditions, bounce of the ball, you provide those, but the gut said this was going to be a walk in the park. I had the good vibe, I had the good gut vibe, the good vibe gut, take it whichever way you want, leading into Ireland. And yet there was still that, this is a big deal. Versus Argentina, it was pretty chill. It was pretty chill. And what happened reflected that sense beforehand, where the All Blacks were able to just start and repel some early Argentine fervour. And then as the tries began to roll, the one on halftime became the exclamation mark. And the score and the result continued to grow. So the All Blacks, what you want really. It's hard to win those 3 knockout matches in a row, especially if they're 3 significant contests. Like if the All Blacks are Ireland in the quarterfinal, France in the semi-final, and the Springboks in the final, that's one heck of a mountain to climb. It requires something of those individuals to keep getting themselves up. Not only form-wise, not only injury-free-wise, but mentally being able to get to that level, because generally both sides in the final don't have the same run. Look at 2019. South Africa come off Japan and Wales in the quarter and semi-final, and can't remember who England played in the quarter-final. Was it France? Might be France. And then they had us in the semi-final, and that was such a performance, but South Africa in the final was too much for them to get up. So the All Blacks will look back on the run, getting past Ireland as being, that was the critical contest, and they were able to do that so that Argentina was pretty copacetic, pretty sweet. They played well, not too many mistakes. Of course, the yellow card, Scott Barrett, he can't do that. You can't be doing something like that. You're on the deck and just knocking it out the hands. That's, in a more consequential match, I'd like to think he wouldn't have such a brain explosion. Will Jordan, number of tries, should have got 4, should have beaten the record. However, Richie Mo'unga thought better of it. Passing, he decided to go himself. I think he seen commentary from the Stan Sport boys on Between Two Posts, I think it was, saying that Richie Mo'unga was probably reading the defenders' bodies, if they were like, or the defenders as they were like trying to get out, cover Will. And so he thought they're already overcorrected, they're already overcommitted, and yet no. So excuse me. Well, Jordan doesn't get the record. Will he get the record in the final? Or will it be one of those by the Bocky? And that indicates the second semi-final. Second semi-final where you thought, well, previous final, England have some thing to pay back. And they will be motivated. Such an interesting run, considering what happened before the Rugby World Cup. And yet they were the only unbeaten team in the semi-finals. And they started and played like they were the better side. I mean, even the commentary out of South Africa is that the Springboks were fortunate. And I thought they were fortunate versus France. And that doesn't downplay what happened and how they were able to cobble together a victory. But it does say that France were able to create so much. And their lack of control, their frivolous nature with the ball in hand, as if this is a festival game, we can just chuck it around and if we don't score now, we'll score later. And that opened the door for the Springboks, and the Springboks made the most of their opportunities, especially in the first half. 3 tries each. And so they were able to get by. And tight moments, tight calls, but that's often knockout rugby. And then the semi-final. England started strong, and even when South Africa were able to get points, I mean, I think of the Billy Vunipola, when he, I said that right, I believe. I was going to repronounce it, but hey. Billy V, Vunipola, yes. From our part of the woods, our part of the world, at least his wider family, and or some of them. I'm getting on a rabbit trail here. I'll just stick to the subject. And Benny Vunipola, when he came on, and I think it was Curry, who's become very much a part of discussions connected with Bongi and Mbonambi. I keep wanting to say Mbonombi, but it's Mbonambi. When he went off for, I think it was his blood, and first touch, and England are looking, just solid. He just drops it, cold drop. And then South Africa are able to get like 3 points from a sort of a following couple of breakdowns, I think. Maybe I've been offside, I'm not sure. But you think that's too easy. England are like creating these points. There's positive signs of their play, and yet they're still offering South Africa too many easy points. Same thing that France did, except France offered them in a try-scoring range, whereas England was more the 3 points, and conditions and stylistically, that was how it was going to be. At halftime, I sent out a message online saying this is a type of test match where one try, preferably converted, it's probably going to be that. Well, it's one of those ones where, I don't know if I said probably, being historically accurate, but pointing out that often is a difference maker, not just because it's a try versus a penalty, but because it's 7 points versus 3 points. And so one side gets the 7 points, and it just offsets them from the other team only scoring 3. And in the end, that would be the difference maker. England were looking good. The bomb squad, a lot's been talked about that. The props coming on, I do remember that's what started it. I think it was that when Jamie George was popped, and they were able to kick in line out, seeing if someone's next door, and Schneemann was able to score the try, and that brought it within 2 points. I was thinking Blacks v Box semi-final 2015 Rugby World Cup, and that's what England needed to do. All England from that point forward, with not that much time left on the clock, just needed to play territory. You kick it long, you kick it deep, and then you present a flat defensive line. You don't overcorrect or overcommit in defense or in your line speed. You're together, you're under control, and you're consistent. And you just keep knocking them down, coming together, knocking them down. And in those type of conditions, it would have been very, very difficult if England continued to kick. It would have required someone in South Africa to say, hey, we're going to have to try and build something. And so for me, one of the probably really sad parts about the contest, because I think he had a really good game, Stewart, the English fullback. And with about, I don't know, was it 4 minutes to go? And he's down there about 30 metres out, catches. And instead of booting it long, instead of saying, we just don't want to play in our own half, we don't want to provide an opportunity for South Africa to get a penalty. And we don't want to allow them an opportunity to potentially get that penalty from a scrum. I mean, that's what had been the elixir for the South Africans. And yet he puts the ball high in the air. Doesn't go long, goes high. And I think they knock on, scrum. We're now at the scrum. Knee down by Genge, and it goes sideways. Those who are more experienced, I played in the back line, inside backs, so I have a lot of experience with scrums. Have said, I think David Flatman was one. Talked about, Genge just changing his angle there, but they were both going side. Would we have liked to have seen it reset? Well, I think if his knee hadn't have gone down, then that's maybe what would have happened. But I think that extra was like, well, his knee's gone down and they're going sideways. I'm not going to burn time, which is interesting from an official because they have tended to, at the end at least, not wanting to be the bad guy. But I think O'Keefe, I think he actually had a better game in the semi-final than he did in the quarter-final. That's my own personal. Not that it was a bad, but there wasn't so many, maybe as many really challenging calls, or calls that I think could have easily, if they had gone the other way, then the result could have easily as well. So I thought he was pretty solid and handled what was required of him in a manner befitting. And it wasn't. He didn't. Even though there's been a lot of talk, I don't think he overstaged. I don't think he was the star of the show, even though the calls were required. Obviously, there's been a lot that's happened post with talks about what did Bongi say. What did he say? Who did he say it to? A lot of discussion, and audio put online, and if that's the case, well, that's the example, then it seemed like maybe it was Afrikaans and to his teammates in terms of the defense. I just saw recently that they are saying that that's actually not the context that's in question. So who would know? And it's certainly something I'm not going to get in. And to sort of offer my own ignorant insight into it, because one, my hearing isn't the best. Two, I actually didn't. They put audio up, but I couldn't actually hear the articulation. They say we headphones. No, and you can, but yeah, I haven't gone to those links, and I guess I'm not that interested. So. Likely, he said, what do you do at that point? But a distraction, and certainly something that the Box would have wanted. So the Springboks, Andre Pollard comes on, stood up when it was counted, kicked the points, and England, a plucky England, yet World Cups are not about being plucky. World Cups are not about, wow, they showed so much more. World Cups are about winning, about the final result. And I think watching it from my perspective as a New Zealander, after seeing our side have that attitude and not being able to finish, you can see that in maybe the other nations involved. Like the All Blacks too long were I think, idealistic. I think the French were too idealistic in their quarterfinal. As if, okay, this is how we play and it's just going to happen. Well, it doesn't necessarily happen that way. The All Blacks have seen before the World Cup and then what happens in the World Cup. In fact, the France have been, one of the prime violators of our rugby journey. 99 being one of those at the Rugby World Cup and what happened previously. So, and I think Ireland, the struggle, we see that with the All Blacks struggle to get past and to get that gorilla off the back. And maybe England a little bit different, and because they played very, but they executed. They were the team that were up. They were making ground. I remember the throws early in the second half when, that throw and then follow when it was like when the cricketers bowl the delivery and it slips out their hand. Jamie George, I don't think I've ever seen that before. But the one, maybe 2 or 3 minutes after halftime, I'm thinking, man, you're 5 or 6 meters out here. You get a good line out drive and you get a try here, and that can be the nail. And yet it's called not straight. You're throwing right to the front and it's not straight. And he's a good thrower inner. It's always a weird way of saying that, thrower inner. I mean, just sounds weird. He throws the ball well, generally. Does RJMA. And small moments that resonate. So it's a New Zealand versus South Africa final. It's an All Blacks versus Springboks final. It's a repeat of Rugby World Cup 1995. There is such a narrative there. I lived through it. I don't know if I'm going to talk about too much about back in that day, but there is a lot there. And I think I even talked about that in an earlier video when we yes, I did. Pretty significant. So the Boks were able to get up in extra time there. Famous drop kick from Joel Stransky. However, so just finals. A final at home for the Springboks, but the All Blacks have played the Springboks 2 other times in the knockouts. Quarterfinal 2003 Rugby World Cup in Australia. And a Springbok team that wasn't at its best, and the All Blacks were able to win. And, of course, 2015, a semi-final. And when the All Blacks won the World Cup and 20 points to 18 victory. Tight contest in weak conditions. That's what I thought about with England, was that All Blacks test. And I remember at the end, the All Blacks got in front, and then they just kept it down there. I remember right on would have been in the last minute, and they were just like, the All Blacks were just like, no. We're going to have a flat line here. You're going to have to do something pretty sensational to be able to break out. We're not going to give you a get-out-of-jail card with a penalty. We're not going to do that. You don't, and I think that's where the Springboks are. One of the reasons why they're so effective is they don't tend to give too many get-out-of-jail cards to the opposition. In fact, they tend to be able to maneuver and manipulate the game so that they're putting the opposition under pressure. But we can talk about that maybe later, maybe in another video, because we're getting close to like 20 minutes. Well, just about. Bit of breeze in New Zealand today, middle New Zealand. Apologise it's taken me so long to get this video out. So, semi-finals, one that was a yawn, one that was pretty tight. And again, sport's interesting. It doesn't necessarily have to be... The imagination of play does not necessarily have to be great if there is proximity between the teams and there is a lot that is hanging on the contest. It makes it quite compelling. And so the England v South Africa semi-final, it was one that captured my attention. I was watching it and it was like, if it had been the other way around, I don't think England are able to do what the Springboks did. And so I think that's a compliment for the South Africans. They are a side who have the ability to find it. Like, I think if I'm to just to provide a little bit about the final, I think the All Blacks are, the All Blacks are peaking. The All Blacks are on that trajectory. Whereas I think South Africa, whether or not they're going down or they're flatlining, it's very hard for them after two really tough contests. They're one of the few sides who, when you look at those details, you think, wow, it'll be tough for them. And it seems like it's going to be a battle. And the All Blacks are on the up, but it is a final. And the All Blacks are rising, therefore they should continue to rise and get lift off in the final. There's always an asterisk there with the Springboks because of their intestinal fortitude, their mental strength, their drive inside not only to win, but what it means to the Rainbow Nation. So you give that, and All Blacks, Springboks have history there. However, if the All Blacks are able to turn up and able to continue and able to keep 15 on the field throughout and show the type of island initiation, if they're able to present that, you would suggest it would be enough. However, we can just park that there because it's played on the field. I remember 95. I remember the final. I remember lying on the carpet after the fact thinking, how the heck did that happen? But it did. And it can. So nothing's guaranteed. You got to put it out. I think the All Blacks will be ready. There is the guts, pretty solid there. So we'll see. Not long now. I am planning on doing more videos. So before the kickoff, Sunday morning New Zealand time. So stay with us. Feel free to like, share, and comment. What are your reflections on the semi-finals? What did you think of the All Blacks' performance? I mean, it is a compliment to say that it was really flat. Not that they were flat, but that it was just they were on a different level. They were playing, a different game. It was a different gravy. They had a different type of sauce. It was whatever analogy, metaphor, illustration you want to use. It wasn't an equal playing field, and the Will Jordan try was pretty special as well. So it's not a negative to point that out, and maybe you want to focus on the English versus the Saffers, and there's a lot that you can talk about the periphery. We'll see what happens with the investigation by World Rugby, and regardless of all those, it's something that they'll get to. And as a Kiwi, I'm not really enamored by all what is going on. They can do the damage there, and we'll see what they come up with. And some days to go. On Wednesday, late afternoon. So plenty riding on the next couple of days, preparation, so that when it's kickoff time, you're good to go. Because there will be small margins. The scoreboard may not necessarily reflect a small margin, but what would lead to those outcomes will be potentially, a little bit there and a little bit there. Just getting the defenders who aren't necessarily as sharp, maybe fatigue. It is going to be challenging for the Boks. I think they're going to have to really find those reserves, and conditions may help. If the wet conditions, they're able to maybe bring the scrum into play and use that as a conduit. We'll see. Time will tell. I better go because I can keep talking, and both of us probably have other things that could justify our time. But I would look forward to hearing from you and what you have to say about the semi-finals or anything associated with it. Wayne Barnes is a referee for the final. Luke Pearce, better talk about Luke Pearce. I rate Luke Pearce. Really enjoy his refereeing. I'm not sure what he has done. I would have given him the New Zealand, Argentina, New Zealand semi-final, and given Angus Gardner the England versus South Africa semi-final. That's what I wouldn't have probably given Ben O'Keefe 2 big matches in a row with one nation. But that's all gone. So Luke Pearce not involved in the final. It's quite interesting to understand why. But Wayne's there. It's his world. English team. He'll be able to handle it, I'm sure. A huge honour. And so we look forward to seeing what will happen in the coming days. That's enough. What say you? I'm Johnny King.